Hi, and welcome to Sustainably Smart Talks, where we're going to bring you researchers, industry leads, and entrepreneurs who are translating smart ideas into a smart future. Well, I'm your host, AJ Makarapa, and today I'm joined by my guest, Serah. Well, Serah is a business psychologist, a therapist, and a founder of a growth strategy consultant dedicated to helping businesses unlock sustainable, people-centered growth. Well, Serah, hello, welcome to this platform. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you so much, AJ. I'm very happy to be here. So my background is in psychology, and I have trained as a I've studied as a business psychologist. I did my master's at Loughborough. I'm also a counseling psychologist and have been practicing for the last 14 years. I love swimming. I love reading. And I enjoy long walks, very long walks, preferably in the evening when the weather is warm and chill. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. So what led you to psychology and therapy into the world of business growth strategy?
Okay, so I was connecting a couple of dots. So the first dot I saw in my therapy room was that people would struggle a lot with their mental well-being, but one of the biggest contributors was their workplace. And the fact that workplaces would be designed and their jobs would be designed in a very rigid way without much consideration for the well-being of the person. So of course that affects productivity. And so what that connected for me was, how then do we support businesses to be able to develop strategy that looks out for the people who execute? And so that connection is what dropped me into the intersection of psychology and strategy.
Okay, excellent. That's led you to start your own company, Hopewell.
Yep.
You brought Carson as well as on episode 9. The co-founders is the part 2 to it. Tell us a little bit about that relationship, about how you started Hopewell Firm,
Yeah.
and tell us about that.
Okay, so we began Hopewell Farm to help businesses figure out how to grow, but we didn't always. That's where we arrived at. It's not where we began from. We began by just combining our two industry expertises, and if you see our very first deck, we make a joke with Carson about the fact that our very first deck was like 4 different industries combined into one. But when we met, we had a conversation about setting up a business that would bring our expertise together, but also that would focus on helping businesses that are set up in the United Kingdom to either scale or to grow, and then connect those businesses if they want to expand to markets like Africa or Kenya, then we could be able to do that. So the conversation began in a very informal way, just like, hey, what are you doing? What do you do? How do you work? And sort of developed over time until we were like, okay, I think we should actually do this as a solid business. So we registered it and set up operations and actually started working with clients.
Yes, indeed. How's it been working with clients? Any notable clients? Any successes that you've done as part of Hopewell Firm?
Yeah.
Please walk us through that.
Okay, so usually, like with every business, when you start out, your first customers are normally either your friends or your family or your people who are close to those two networks. So what happened with us is that our very first clients were part of our network that grew from the university. And then when we got into the incubator, we also got to work with several other businesses because of that. And so what's happened with our clientele is that we've worked with companies in the nonprofit sector, we've worked with companies in the well-being and health tech sector, we've worked with companies in the technology space, in the agriculture space, in manufacturing space. And so what we've discovered is that businesses need to figure out how to grow, but the answer to that question is very contextualized. So for example, for agroindustrial, what you may need to grow is very different from what a health tech company will need to grow. So we are very good at being able to implement and bring the business and the people focus into the way we develop strategy, which is unique because most people either end up paying for one or the other.
Okay.
Yeah, and so some of the biggest milestones we've had is in terms of revenue. Some of our clients have really, really grown their revenue, like 6x in like 2 months. So some of our other clients have gotten to develop clarity for their businesses, and they're able to now know, okay, this is what I need to do next. other clients that we've worked with, we've supported with areas of implementation that don't even involve our own forte. But of course, we work with associates who are experts in those industries. So we've worked with companies to help them staff, and they've been able to deliver on some of the contracts that they have. So that's essentially part of the kind of success story of having worked and interacted with me and having worked and interacted with Carson and our business, Hopewell Farm.
It's indeed. So what would you say, how does your background in psychology help our business grow and scale?
Yeah, so what my background in psychology does is that it focuses on the person as we are developing the strategy, because most often than not, the strategy is for the business. Where is the business heading? But so I bring psychology because I bring understanding of pricing psychology. I bring understanding of human behavior and purchase psychology, but I also bring understanding of the people who are actually executing the plan that has been developed. And so what I bring is usually things like assessments into the way that we work. I will bring things like frameworks for things like decision making into the way that we work, so that when we develop a strategy together collaboratively, we've closed in on you as a person, if you're a single founder, or you as a person and your team, and the business. So that's essentially how I bring psychology into it.
Yes, indeed. Well, businesses are complex, and you work in making them resilient. But what is the biggest misconception that people have about growth in business?
I think the biggest misconception is that growth in business is complex. That's the misconception. So when we look at how we want to grow our business, we almost find like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 things that we need to do all at once. But what happens is that when you develop clarity, you find that it's only one thing that you need to first do. You're able to prioritize and recognize that, okay, if we start with one block, then we'll be able to unlock the next block, and then we'll unlock the next block. But the problem is that all these blocks are on the table and they're all important. So being able to recognize and simplify what needs to be done first, I think, is how we get to a point where strategies are effective and there aren't documents that we do not implement or execute.
Yes, indeed. So you combine the therapeutic insight with business acumen.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
So I have to ask, how do you balance the human side of business with financial strategy?
Yeah. So this is the interesting reality, is that when you work with a business, when you work with the people in a business, if the people are engaged, they're well taken care of,
Yes.
they become more productive, and that therefore means that your revenue makes sense. But if the people are not taken care of, they disengage, they're demotivated, and it shows in the way that your revenues look. So essentially how I integrate the person into the bigger plan is figuring out what motivates them, what makes them show up at work, what makes them remain at work and engage with the work. And then we develop what you need in your workplace environment to ensure that that is working. And doesn't matter whether you're a solopreneur or you have a team. We essentially duplicate this same model for the different members of the team, and then we put it into like a master plan so that okay, in my company, for example, I work with a team of techies, which means that they prefer to work at night. They don't like to work during the day.
Yes, I'm one of them myself, by the way. I've given up caffeine so I can try work in the day because I'm always up all at night. But
exactly.
Yes, you say.
So you recognize that software developers will prefer to code at night than to code during the day, which means when you have expectations of changes being made during the day, they will likely be implemented at night.
Yes.
Because the person writing the code is either asleep or playing video games because they've been coding all night. So what you then recognize is the way you adapt your work environment to accommodate this person in the way that they work and their motivations when they're working. And so that makes it possible for you as a business owner or an employer not to get frustrated when you messaged your developer at 2 p.m. and you got the results the next day at 6 a.m. It's because then you manage your own expectations. So the leadership of the team becomes easier. So that's essentially what I bring. We simplify it this way so that it makes sense for your business. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. So I know that definitely men usually have a problem with getting into like psychology, into therapy and stuff like that. But what would you say, what patterns have you often seen holding leaders or teams back from sustainable growth?
I think one of the things that holds people back is that they don't know how to take care of themselves. And so they burn out over and over and over.
That's true.
And what we all fail to recognize is usually how much time and resources we lose during our recovery from burnout. And so you'll identify that when we don't recognize or put in place the ways that we take care of ourselves to prevent constantly burning out, we end up exhausted, we can't do anything, and then it takes us another week to rest and recover, and then it takes us another week to get back into work mode, and that already means we've lost 2 weeks of productivity. But if we were intentional and decided to take a break, for example, 2 days into the job or 2 days into the project or 1 week into the project, we would be able to avoid this 2-week lost time because we would work for another full month.
Okay.
So essentially what I think affects sustainability when it comes to us as people and the way we work, and leaders especially, is that we don't take care of ourselves. So we always burn out. And then we lose resources, we lose opportunities, we lose time, and we lose money.
Yes, indeed. I agree with that because in my personal experience, I've suffered burnout multiple times, and the recovery after that has been quite difficult. But I found that, going to the gym and I was speaking to very close friends. But those who are dealing with burnout, what's your advice to them? So that how to get out of that rut so it's not 2 weeks, maybe they can shorten that to maybe a week. Maybe a couple of days. In fact, maybe just 1 day. What would you say to those people?
I think you need to recognize the symptoms, the signs when you're starting to burn out as a leader or as an entrepreneur or as a founder or as a professional. And you need to recognize when you're starting to get too tired, you're losing interest in the job, you're losing interest in the work is not fulfilling anymore. So that's usually the signals that it's blinking red. So when you recognize the symptoms for burnout, then you can be preventative, you can take action. So what actions do you first take? Rest. And there are different forms. Just for the context of not making this into a TED talk about burnout, I'll say there's physical rest. So it means you actually sleep or you take a break from your physical work. If you would like to manual work, of course, you actually sleep. There's emotional rest, there's social rest, there's psychological rest, and I think there's 3 or 4 more others. So you need to identify in which space are you resting the least, even creatively. So for some people, taking a break or managing burnout means they express their creative outlet. For some people, their job is a creative outlet, which means what they need to do is, for example, take physical rest, so stop working and stop producing. So it's being able to recognize these are the symptoms, and then what kind of rest do I need? For some people, it's also social support. So talking to your friends, talking to like-minded colleagues or like-minded entrepreneurs or founders who are real, so they're not giving you their, PR story, but also family, friends, relationships, romantic relationships if you have them, or friendships if you have them, as a way to now talk about, I'm struggling, guys, or I'm not doing great. And then there's, of course, taking care of your physical and nutritional health. So it's not just going to the gym, it's also eating right, because those 2 things are tied to your ability to regulate the hormones in your body and the emotions that you feel.
I agree with that. Definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
So what role does resilience and mental health play in long-term business success then?
I think resilience plays the role of getting you through the difficult times. When you hear the no's, when you hear the rejections, when you receive shutdowns on your proposals and your ideas, resilience is actually what gets you through those seasons. And essentially is the backbone of sustainability or success. We usually say that most successful businesses end up hitting the 10-year mark, but how many pitfalls, how many challenges do you end up facing to get to the 10-year mark?
Yes, indeed.
So resilience is the fuel for actually sustainable growth, because it's what gets you through the difficult times, the no's and the rejections, and the downtimes and the cricket times.
Yes, indeed. So,
Yeah.
ever dealt with a client that had personal circumstances about affecting their business?
Yeah. Oh, a lot.
I know that you're a psychologist, so you can't really give too many details, but keep yourself legally above board and just share an example of how you can best, of course.
All right. So yes, I have worked with individuals who've struggled in their personal lives, and that has ended up affecting their work lives. I'd give you an example. Someone who's struggling with an addiction, for example, to alcohol.
Yes, I was about to bring that up as well, like vices, because in the world of entrepreneurship, you see us in business suits and stuff like that, but after 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock, that people rush to the bottle because of the high demands and stress of this job of trying to work 70 hours. Some people can't feel to sleep, some addicted to sleeping pills. Some as well addicted to cannabis, of course. There's a lot of issues that happen when this happens. Of course, other ones go to other substances that we won't mention in Sustainably Smart Talks, of course. But what do we say about those clients with those certain vices?
So you'll find that when you're struggling with certain addictions or concerns, that will normally affect the business. And of course, it affects sustainability because your health gets impaired. But the other thing that gets impaired is usually finances. So some businesses that heavily depend on you as a founder, if your health gets impaired, you see it in your revenues. And for your financial decision making because of lifestyle costs, then ends up getting or affecting the way your business operates and the way your business runs. And usually what will happen is that most times when you're working with founders or investors, there isn't a lot of critical analysis into the relationship between your financial decision making in the business and your financial decision making in your personal life because of things like addiction. So I think that's one of the examples of instances where I've worked with clients whose personal lives are affecting their work. I think another interesting one that I've seen with some of our clients has been around physical health. I'll share my own personal example, by the way. So I had to have tonsillectomy done sometime 2 or 3 years ago. And at the time, my full work involved psychology work. And so one-to-one sessions with clients. Of course, so it involved talking and using my voice. But then what happened is that because I had to have the surgery done, my recovery time was like 6 weeks. I remember when I went back to work and I looked at my financials, I could literally see the financial dip because of the fact that I was sick. And so that, of course, impacts the sustainability of the business, and also, for example, impacts businesses that are solopreneurs, because there's always a question of what happens when you're unwell and you're unable to deliver. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. So what about, so if they don't have any vices, because they all have money personality. So the 5 money personalities are big spenders, they're savers, they're shoppers, debtors, and investors. Looking at all 5, what would you say for the big spenders? And what kind of would you say to their psychology to try and not bankrupt the business?
I would say with big spenders, you need to learn delayed gratification. So you need to plan in your big spends so that you slowly work towards them in the way that you spend your money, so that you're not depriving yourself of your big spend, but you're delaying it such that your business is actually able to afford your big spend.
Yes, indeed.
I think that's what I'd be saying for the big spenders.
Definitely, because I've dealt with that myself a little bit. So I'm dealing to delay gratification, but there's always an aspect of like if delayed gratification becomes no gratification. But there has to come with the balance about like for planning your financials, because you have to separate your personal finances and your business finances. That's something that's very elementary, very key. And my early journey, I know I used to keep those modeled up at the same time, because I didn't mind losing money into my bank account, put more money into my bank account. But when it comes to tax reporting, that group account, there's a way that can work against you. So make sure that those two are two separate, independent. The business is separate from you as the founder. Even though you work for the company, you've started the company, but in the eyes of the government, you guys are two separate people. Well, Serah,
Yeah.
How would you see the future of business psychology and growth strategy evolving in the next decade?
I think I see a very big peak because of artificial intelligence and the fact that people's relationship with the way they develop strategy is heavily reliant now on using technology. But what's likely to happen in the future is that there are going to be fewer people who have the understanding of the people side, and they're going to definitely be a lot more in demand because of that knowledge and understanding, and because that knowledge is what brings context to the technology when you're implementing strategy. So in the next 10 years, I think that's one of the things I anticipate seeing. The other thing I anticipate seeing is a lot of intersections like the one we have now of psychology and strategy, intersections of psychology, strategy, and technology. I also expect to see intersections of and creations of like unexpected opportunities, for example, around cultural specific context. So when you're developing strategy for different markets, being able to recognize where is this market in terms of tech and how to develop strategy for it. So I think that's the kind of future I'm painting over the next 10 years. Yeah.
A lot of people do use AI as the personal therapist.
Yes,
exactly. Therapist, but there is a lot of issues that ChatGPT actually got into because of not availing some of the sensitive information when people are feeling suicidal. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that, by the way?
I think what happens with technology, especially, for example, LLMs, large language modules, is that they don't have the appropriate coding to be able to respond the way that we expect them to respond.
Yes.
So because a large language module has been programmed and taught to read through information and process essentially large language or a lot of data, but it's not been programmed to pick up on certain keywords as concerning and to signpost. So yes, there are solutions for AI for therapy. Yes, there are solutions that have been exclusively developed to provide therapy services. I think one of the cool ones I found was called Sonia, that is like very specific to a specific kind of cognitive behavioral therapy service provision. And so, yes, there's AI use, and of course we use ChatGPT because it's common to us, but of course it also has biases because it's programmed to be your yes man. It's not programmed to actually help you with your well-being. And so I think what we need to do is to become cognizant and improve our critical thinking so that we know what tools we are using for what purpose. Just the same way you know that you will use ChatGPT, for example, for large language, but you'll use, for example, an AI platform like, I don't know, video.ai. I don't know if there's like
yes, indeed.
There is, that helps you with like your video editing. So it's the same thing with, for example, therapy and well-being. Looking for solutions that are specific to the industry or to the concerns that you have, because then you're more likely to get concise support.
Yes, indeed. So in terms of like the virtual interactions and in-person interactions, how do you make sure you can signpost some of these things, maybe like body language, through a virtual session?
So what happens is if there's video support, the other thing that I've seen that makes human beings some of the best therapists in the world is because of their ability to assess nonverbal skills. So technology still hasn't gotten to a point where it can assess tonal variation enough to be able to tell distressful signals accurately, but that is something that therapists and professionals can do extremely well, even without any other source of data, like even if you're not seeing the person. An example would be like, I have a client I worked with for, I think, like 3 years. And in the 3 years, their video camera was never on. They only had it on the very first session to prove that they are a human being. But that was it. Every other session was an audio session. So what happened is that I got so good at listening that I could tell when my client was crying, just from, and even when they're muffling their voice, but I can tell that tears are falling down their eyes. So the ability to use certain aspects of data or certain sensory stimulation to inform therapy is something that, of course, technology has a long way to go.
There's a lot.
But that's how we actually look at it and do it.
So I would suggest that, don't use ChatGPT as your therapist.
Don't.
And also feedback what you're trying to give it to as well. So
Exactly.
But to close off, Serah, if you leave business leaders with one piece of advice about growing both sustainably and smartly, what would it be?
I think invest in yourself as a business leader, and not only in terms of your education and information, but also in terms of your well-being, mostly because you need to adapt as your business adapts. And if you don't adapt correctly, then you become a bottleneck to the growth of your own business. And those kind of spaces don't exist a lot for founders, or people are not as informed about being able to understand what does your business need from you as a founder now at a personal level. And as your business evolves or grows or scales, what and how do you as a person need to evolve and grow and change for that level of scale? So I think that would be my last parting shot to you. Invest in being educated and informed as an entrepreneur. Invest in your well-being for every level of growth of your business.
Oh, yes. Well, this has been another episode of Sustainably Smart Talks. I'll leave Serah's contact details, the website to Hopewell firm, her LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Well, this is the podcast where we promise to bring you researchers, industry leads, entrepreneurs working at the forefront of turning smart ideas into a smart future. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Serah, for your time. Bye.